Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch from Lincoln-Goldfinch Law. I'm an immigration lawyer. I've been in the space for about 20 years. I'm based in Texas, and this is not my first live. I've done lives before, but I'm starting a new series where I will be going live at this time, 11 a.m. Central in English, and I'll do a show with updates. I'll answer live questions. I'll give you an action step you can take, because I know that's one of the things that people are wanting so much right now, is to know what you can be doing to affect change in the field of immigration. And I will also be doing another live show with the same topics, but in Spanish on Thursdays. So the first thing I'm going to do in our show is talk through the immigration updates of the week. There have been a lot of activities this week. We are tracking about 4 to 5 changes per day from the Trump administration in the field of immigration. So the first thing I'll say is that it's really hard to keep up. If you're feeling overwhelmed and you don't know what to trust, or you don't know which news is accurate, you're not alone. And what I will do with this show is try to give you accurate, up-to-date reports on what's happening. You can also follow my socials, and I'm doing videos every day with changes that are occurring. So here's what the top immigration news of the week is. Today is the 11th of March. The first thing is we have the detention of Mahmoud Khalil. He is a pro-Palestine protester, activist who led many protests at Columbia University. He was detained by the Department of Homeland Security in his home this week. He was initially taken away without any information given to his wife, who's a U.S. citizen, or to his lawyer about his whereabouts, which was very concerning. It's also concerning that he has not been convicted of any criminal activity. He is a green card holder, and it appears as though he has been arrested for exercising his free speech, which is super duper creepy. Of course, this is a very divisive issue. The protests on campus are a divisive issue. I know that it raises a lot of concerns and feelings from a lot of people about what's going on. But ultimately, I think we should all be concerned that when someone is exercising their free speech and they are detained and their family is not told their whereabouts, that is an action by the government that should concern us all. Probably the argument of the DHS secretary on the detention would be that because he's a green card holder, he can be found to be deportable for espousing terrorist activities or supporting a terrorist organization like Hamas, for example. So that's going to be the argument of DHS. A federal court has already blocked his deportation. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot more to come on that. But that's the overall status of things on Mahmoud Khalil. Another piece of news is regarding the CBP One app. This was the app that was actually functioning relatively well during the Biden administration, that allowed people like Ukrainian parole applicants and other parole applicants to apply for entry into the United States. They would, submit their photos, submit their background check, await their turn to come to the border. That app was completely shut down by the Trump administration of day one in office, and thousands of people who had been going through the process had their applications and their flights and their appointments canceled. It was really devastating for a lot of people. Well, it appears as though the Trump administration is converting CBP One to something called CBP Home, which is now going to be used for immigrants inside the United States to register to depart the country. So it's changing from an entry app to a self-deportation app. More to come on that for sure. Item number 3, there's 6 items to go through today, is regarding Fort Bliss, which is a big military base in El Paso, Texas, is going to be used as a deportation hub. So a detention center for immigrants right before they are being deported. We're going to see thousands of immigrants probably sent to Fort Bliss. Counter arguments to the use of military forts like this is that it reduces our military readiness when we are sending and spending so many resources on interior removals. There's concerns about if Fort Bliss is being used for that our military readiness is reduced. Item number 4 is regarding the immigration registry. So Trump announced a requirement that all immigrants, essentially undocumented immigrants, there's certain categories who are in the United States are required to register with the government. And presumably those registrants will be their deportation process will be initiated. Trump has threatened civil and criminal penalties for people who do not register. We have a proposed regulation on this. It is not final. So as of today, March 11th, there's no requirement that anybody register. There's actually no way for any person to register. So my advice today, of course, is that no one should be registering. However, that might change, but here's what I'm going to say about registry. Okay, a lot of people are going to want a yes or no answer from an attorney. Should I register? Shouldn't I register? What I want to say is that this is a big decision for an individual. It's a very personal decision that someone needs to be really informed and educated about before they make this decision for themselves in their own lives. Things we are going to be looking at is, what are the civil penalties? Is there a fine? What are the criminal penalties? Is it a misdemeanor? Does it contain potential jail time? Is the law even legal that threatens these penalties? Is there going to be a lawsuit against the registry requirement? Is a federal court probably going to enjoin this registry requirement? That's all within the realm of possibility. And so these are things we're going to be watching for. What is the Trump administration going to do with people who do register? We need to watch out for that. And so before you listen to some quick, video from someone who says, yes, everybody should register, no, nobody should register, please don't take advice that is that black and white about something that is so critical to your own life and your own future. You need to become educated and consult with an immigration lawyer about your own case and your own decision to register. I will be talking a lot more about this registry requirement, but as of right now, there's no requirement to register. Fifth item on my list of updates is regarding it's almost like a request for applicants from the Trump administration asking USCIS employees. So USCIS is the agency that processes green cards and work permits and citizenship cases, and they are not enforcement, right? USCIS does not conduct immigration enforcement, but the Trump administration has asked USCIS employees to volunteer to support ICE in enforcement and removal activities. It's unheard of. It has not occurred in the past. It's odd. It's concerning. We don't know what these people are going to be doing, but they're asking for people from USCIS to sort of transition over into a new agency and focus on enforcement. And then finally, on my updates, we do know that immigration is going to start asking for social media handles of people who are applying for certain immigration benefits like green cards. That's going to become part of the forms. And as always, I've talked about this stuff for years with you guys. Be aware. What are you putting out online? Are you, and it's not, I'm not saying don't express your political opinion. It's not about that, but it's like, extreme examples. Are you posting pictures of you with a bunch of guns in the background, or, doing nefarious activities, or are you, demonstrating that your relationship is a valid one if you're applying for a green card through marriage? Like, these are the things that immigration is going to be looking at. And so, as always, be thoughtful about who you are out there online, especially if you're going through an immigration process, and especially now because you're going to have to put your social media handles on your immigration applications. There you have it. Those are your immigration updates of the week. I'm going to move into the questions that I've received. These are all questions that I get in my law firm through social media. So we have a lot of people message us and ask for appointments and ask questions. And my team has compiled these questions, and I'm going to be answering them here for you. I will prioritize questions that are coming in on the live stream. So if you're watching and you have a question, go ahead and just put it in the comments. And my awesome production crew here, the Gandon Lee family, Jennifer and Christopher, they are amazing. They're behind the scenes, and they'll be passing me the live questions that are coming in. And I'll be reading these questions. I also want to just pause for a moment and celebrate my outfit today, because sometimes my 12-year-old daughter and I do this regularly. They're super creative. And every once in a while, we'll do a week of where my daughter gets to pick all my outfits. So this was a total creation of my 12-year-old, and I'm going with it fully. I think it's a pretty good one. So let's move into the questions. The first one we've gotten this week is, can a matrícula consular be used as an ID? And I think this is such a great question. So a matrícula consular is an ID government. It's an ID document from the Mexican government, or some other governments too, but I know that that's what they call it in the government of Mexico. And there's a lot of undocumented people who don't have a Texas driver's license or a U.S. passport or a work permit, and they want to carry an ID around with them and be able to prove who they are if they have, an arrest or an interaction with law enforcement. I don't recommend using foreign ID documents to identify yourself in the United States, especially in the state of Texas right now. Under the current climate, I don't think it's a good idea. I had a client recently who's from a Central American country. He got pulled over. He had car insurance. He had a passport from another country, and the police officer called ICE on him because he showed his foreign passport. It's just not a good idea. You are handing over evidence to a police officer that you are not from the United States. And of course, that's not illegal, but it does sometimes initiate a call to ICE by that police officer. My recommendation is that you leave your foreign ID documents at home. Your passports, your ID documents, leave them at home and try to get a document from the United States to identify yourself. And I know it's like, if you don't have a work permit or, Texas ID, that's hard. But I can say that, in Austin, where I live, and lots of surrounding counties, the library systems are starting to create IDs that have someone's photo and their date of birth and everything that they would need to identify themselves. So go to the library or register for some classes in your community college and get a student ID there. There's a lot of ways that you can ID yourself without showing a foreign document. So that's my advice on foreign docs. Question number 2. What are the legal implications in a custodial situation where the parents are separated? The custodial parent is a DACA recipient and the non-custodial parent is a U.S. citizen. I've actually been discussing this question recently with lots of people who do family law, including some of the judges. And here's the law on this, right? When we've got one parent who is an immigrant or is undocumented, another parent who is a U.S. citizen, and there's a custody battle going on in court. The court is not supposed to take into consideration the legal status or the immigration status of either parent. That should not come into play in a custody determination. But in times of heightened enforcement, like we're in today, it's certainly within the realm of possibility that the attorney who's representing the U.S. citizen might say, Your Honor, let's say they represent the dad and he's a U.S. citizen. Your Honor, the mother of this child is undocumented. If she gets pulled over, CPS is going to come and pick her up, and therefore I should have, primary custody of this child because of the risk. Here's what mom can do. Mom can and should complete what's called a voluntary caregiver authorization to give permission to someone else to come and pick up her kids if she gets pulled over or stopped or arrested. And that person should have a green card or U.S. citizenship, and they should live within 15 minutes away so they can come at any time. If you want a copy of this, go to my website, abogadakate.com. There's a resources page. There's a family safety planning packet you can download that has this caregiver authorization. So that's the response that I would give in court as the mother or the parent who is undocumented or has shaky legal status, to say, I've done everything I need to do to protect my children in case something happens to me from an immigration perspective. And that's what you can do. Any lawyers who have questions about this, call me, email me, talk to me, because I know this comes up for you guys a lot. We do not want the legal community to start arguing that legal status should count in a custody decision. So keep that in mind too. Like, don't start, with those sort of like low blow arguments, please. Okay, third question. Is it true that they are allowing mothers with children aged 1 month and older to pass into the United States? No, I mean, they never really did. During the Biden administration, certain people who were applying for asylum or qualified for some sort of urgent humanitarian reason to come to the United States could get processed in, but not like by and large just because someone had a child. Right now, though, essentially the borders are completely shut down to all asylum seekers. since Trump took office. That's just the way that it's been. They're returning to the migrant protection protocols where they're sending people back to Mexico, et cetera. But the reality is just on the ground, nobody is getting processed in. Next question. Is it safe to file a family-based case if I entered on parole or through CBP-1 and haven't applied for asylum or been placed in deportation proceedings? Here's what I want to say about y'all. Everybody who entered on CBP-1 or parole, listen up, please, because there's a leaked memo that's going after you guys specifically. People who were admitted into the country through parole, through CBP-1, and who have not been placed in proceedings or applied for asylum are going to be targeted by the Trump administration for fast-track deportation, expedited removal. So you all must absolutely consult with an immigration lawyer and find out what applications you can make to protect yourself other than that parole, because that parole you entered on is not going to keep you safe. It's not going to protect you. So for example, if you are afraid of returning to your country, you need to apply for an asylum. You need to submit your asylum application. That's an indication that you can't be expeditedly removed. And so I really hope, this is one of the things that I've been saying for months, and I need everybody to hear me. People who entered on parole have a work permit now or have TPS, and they're feeling safe and they're feeling protected and they're not taking action. And they say things like, I don't have a lot of money. I just came in. I just got my work permit. This is a priority. Please understand. This is a priority for you. Talk to a lawyer, get an asylum application on file if you have a fear of returning, because you are not protected with that parole anymore. Okay, so hopefully you hear me. Here's a question that just came in. Thank you, via TikTok. Thanks. If you're married in Mexico, can you get married here? Is it recommended? You don't need to. So the way that marriages work for immigration purposes, you just marry one time and your marriage just needs to be valid in the jurisdiction where it occurred. You don't need to marry again or divorce again. Like one marriage, one divorce, wherever it occurs, as long as it's legal, is fine. If I entered the U.S. on parole and I married a U.S. citizen, should I leave the country to adjust my status, or can I adjust while staying here? Probably you can adjust status while staying here. It depends on the type of parole that they gave you. I'm pretty sure it's 212D5 is the type you need, but I'd have to go back and check the updates on the parole types. What we need to do is have a consultation, look at your parole document, make sure that you're eligible to adjust, and then move forward. And hopefully you are. That'll be a lot better for you. You probably were placed potentially in removal proceedings, so we'd also need to deal with your removal proceedings and maybe get them terminated in order for you to adjust status. So it can be a little complicated, but definitely doable. Congratulations on your marriage. Does the recent update affect only asylum seekers, or does it also apply to individuals in removal proceedings, including those with pending hearings or work permits? My guess is what you're talking about is this update about putting people who were paroled in expedited removal. And what they've said, like someone who applied for asylum theoretically could be reviewed for expedited removal, but it doesn't behoove them to do that, because one way to stop expedited removal is to claim asylum. So if somebody's already claimed asylum, they're not going to put that person in expedited removal, because then that person's just going to claim asylum, right? So that's why I say one of the things you guys need to be thinking about doing is applying for asylum if you have a real case, if you're afraid of returning to your country. Can someone with a pending case but no criminal record see an immigration judge, and would this apply to individuals with a criminal record who were never convicted? Let me read this again. Can someone with a pending case but no criminal record see an immigration judge, and would this apply to individuals with a criminal record who were never convicted? Additionally, can they request a bond while awaiting their case? Yeah, I mean, lots of people who get put in, okay. We have criminal justice system and immigration system. They are different. Someone can get arrested, convicted, serve their time, and then their whole immigration process starts separately, okay? The two separate systems. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of immigration advocates like me don't argue that we should have more jail time or more criminal justice consequences in the immigration system, because the criminal justice system handles them, right? Like the person has already served their time. Over here, We're just asking an immigration question. But to the question about, can someone who doesn't have a criminal conviction on their record seek relief before an immigration judge? Yes, for sure. It's rather complicated. Like, what people can apply for in removal proceedings could be cancellation of removal. It could be asylum. It could be a particular waiver. So there's a vast array of outcomes available in removal proceedings for people who have some criminal convictions, and obviously for people who don't. And a lot of people are eligible for bond, and it depends upon your history. One thing I will add is that under the Lincoln-Riley Act, just people who were accused of theft convictions, no conviction is needed, then those people are mandatorily detained under that act. When, like, even people who are arrested for shoplifting, diapers, and not convicted, theoretically are subject to mandatory detention under the Lincoln-Riley Act, which is unfortunate. What will happen to the Keeping Families Together program? The government says they never refund fees. Seems they are contradicting themselves. They refunded our fee. Good question. Okay, so in August, the Biden administration announced the Keeping Families Together program. This was a very common sense move that would have allowed people who are married to U.S. citizens to get status and stay here without having to go through the 6-year-long ridiculous process that exists right now. I mean, it's like made total sense. But of course, a lot of states led by Texas filed a lawsuit, got an injunction against the program. A federal judge held, conservative federal judge held that the program was unconstitutional right before the change in administration. So the Biden administration just didn't even have time to appeal. And I would argue they should have done it a lot sooner. But that program died. Meanwhile, a lot of people had applied and submitted their applications, submitted their filing fees. It is a rare thing for immigration to receipt a case and refund filing fees. This might be the only time I've ever seen this in my practice, actually. But the people who applied for Keeping Families Together did get their filing fees back, for the most part. Question via Facebook. Thanks for the question. A family got deported. Their pet was taken to the shelter to be adopted by someone else. Oh, that's heartbreaking. What do you recommend for them to do to be reunited with their pets? Okay, my answer to this question is the same as kids, house, car, company, pets. People who are in, an undocumented status right now, as unpleasant as it is, should be thinking about what could happen to me if I get deported. Who is going to pick up my kids from school? Who is going to sell my house? Who is going to wrap up my affairs? Who's going to take care of my pets? And you need to have agreements with these folks in place, and signed agreements, ideally. So, like I said, the voluntary caregiver authorization that's in my safety packet at abogadakate.com handles the children. For the other stuff, you need, it's either like a power of attorney or a living trust, where somebody else has authorization over your things. And the more complicated your estate is, the more complicated this agreement's going to be. Like, if you have a lot of money and you have a couple houses and you have all this stuff, well, you're going to need to hire a lawyer to create a trust and to make sure all of this is done right. If you just have a dog and you rent your apartment and you don't care about your things, then make sure you've talked to, like, your sister or your best friend and say, I need you. This person who's a U.S. citizen, I need you to go to my house and get my dog and make sure that they're taken care of. I mean, once they're already in the shelter, I would hope that this person could go to the shelter and do the adoption and then get the animal to you in your country if that's what you want. But the thing I'll say about all this stuff is be planning ahead. If you're undocumented, make a plan now for all of these things, because on the back end, it's just so much worse, right? It's like, I think about when the fires happened in LA, and so many people who had the fire just like coming down the mountain talked about, like, they're standing in their house and they have 5 minutes and they're like, I don't even know what to grab. It's like that when somebody gets picked up. So you don't have your faculties about you. You can't even think about, you forget you have a dog, in that moment. So take a moment now and think about the worst possible scenario. And make a family plan. Talk to Aunt Sarah. Make sure she's going to have her phone on at all times. Make sure she's got the authorization to pick up the kids. Make sure she's listed at AISD as an emergency contact. Make sure she knows where, all the important documents are. And then meet with the kids. Meet with the kids if they're old enough, because they know what's up. These kids know what's up. And have a family meeting and say, kids, Trump is the president. People like us are, being targeted. Here's what we need to do. We're going to put a sign on the front door that says, don't open the door for the police. Come get mommy or daddy. And so the kids know they're not to open the door if somebody's knocking. Make sure they know Aunt Sarah is their emergency contact. If they can't find you, they don't know what's going on. Make sure they've memorized her phone number, or they have it like in a bracelet that they wear on them at all time. They know she's the one who's going to be there for them, and that they know that there's a plan, because every parent has to make their own decision for their own children, of course. In my opinion, it makes the kids feel safer to know that you've thought about it and you've created a plan and that you've talked to them about it. Let me do one more question, and then I'm going to get to the action tip of the week before we wrap. What should someone do if authorities ask for a warrant but refuse to provide one, and instead they force their way into a home to take people out? It's always a possibility that law enforcement is not going to observe or respect people's constitutional rights. That's always a possibility. What we need to do in those moments is witness. Take notes. Write down who the agents are. What agency are they from? What are their names and badge numbers? If anybody's there and they can record what's happening on their phone, do it. You can record law enforcement activity anywhere in the country. You can record them doing their jobs. What you can't do is interfere with them, get in their way, yell at them, create a disruption. So witness, take notes. If you've got a law enforcement officer that's not respecting someone's constitutional rights, it's probably futile to argue with that person, right? And say like, oh, you shouldn't be arresting me. This is racial profiling. They're not going to be like, oh, you know what? You're right. Let me stop what I'm doing. That's not the way that goes down. So you have to witness what's happening and then talk to a lawyer later. And I can tell you there is an army of civil rights attorneys who are available and willing to help people who are suffering human rights abuses at the hands of law enforcement. So just trust that in that moment it's going to be really horrible, but there's something you can do after the fact as long as you've got evidence. And with that, I'm finished answering the questions. Thanks for those of you who have sent them in. I really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing this, following me. I'll be doing this every Tuesday at 11 in English and Thursday at noon in Spanish. Here's your action tip of the week. For those of you who care about this stuff and you just want to feel like you're making a difference, we're going to start simple. Here's an action tip for you. Go to a local restaurant that's owned by an immigrant that has the cuisine of another country. Try some dish you've never tried before. Talk to the owner of the restaurant. Ask them to tell you about their country. Learn something you didn't know. And then tell people about your experience. Post it on social media. I went to this Greek restaurant. I talked to the owner. I tried this new dish. I learned this about Greece. And I'm so glad that we have restaurants like this in the United States. How great is that? Just do that. Just do that as your first action tip, and we'll come up with something a little bit harder next week. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks to the Gannon Lees for awesome production work behind the cameras, and I'll see you soon.